There's a decision I made this year that looked right on paper. Every reason behind it was solid. I could explain it to anyone and they would agree. And every time I actually spoke it out loud, something in me pulled me back. Not loud, not dramatic, just this quiet discomfort I couldn't argue with and couldn't get rid of. Because I was about to build the most personal thing I'll ever build. My own brand, my work, everything I want to say to the world. And I was about to build it as the guy I was before any of this started. I talked about it with people I really trust, and I did it more than once, and the problem is, it wasn't really working. Everyone had their own opinion, every opinion was different, and not a single one of them was mine. So for a few months, I ignored it. 4 years ago, I made my first real video. I had just came back from Mexico with a camera I barely knew how to use, and footage I couldn't stop watching. I spent over a month editing it. Nobody asked me to. There was no channel, no audience, no reason to put that kind of time into it. I just couldn't stop. And somewhere in that month I felt something I had never felt before. I was passing without me noticing, no part of me anywhere else. No question in my head about whether this was worth doing. I didn't have a word for it back then. It was the first time in my life I was completely inside something. That video is where my filmmaking started. It's where everything I'm doing now started. I found the thing I want to spend my life on, and I wasn't looking for it. And I recorded voiceover in English, without questioning it for a second. No perfect strategy, no opinions in my head, nobody telling me what the smarter move would be. Just me, the footage, and the clearest feeling I've ever had, that this was mine. And here's the part I think you'll recognize. You've had this too, something you did before anyone had an opinion about it. You didn't decide it, you didn't weigh it against anything. You just knew all the way down that this was yours. And you didn't need a single reason to back that up. And then other people started talking. The advice was good. That's the part I want to be honest about, because it would be easy to tell this story as if people were wrong. They weren't. Work in your mother tongue. You'll always be more precise in it. There's less competition in that market. You'll stand out faster. You'll sound more like yourself. You'll be able to say exactly what you mean. And authenticity is everything. People feel it immediately. Every one of those points is true. And I didn't just nod along. I spent weeks on this. Researched markets, compared numbers, wrote both sides out on paper. Ran it past everyone whose judgment I respect. I was looking for the flaw in it. There wasn't one. That's what makes advice like this so hard to push back against. It isn't stupid, it's valid. It comes from people who know what they're talking about, and it survives every test you put it through. The problem was never that the advice was weak. The problem was that it was convincing, and it still had nothing to do with who I am. Because there was one thing none of those arguments could account for. And it turned out to be the only thing that mattered. So I gave in. Not in one moment, slowly. I started planning in German, writing scripts in German, and building the whole thing around a decision I had been talked into. And the further I went, the heavier it got. Not in my head, on paper it made still really sense. But I was feeling it in my body. Every time I was sitting down to write something in me refused. A week ago, I cut a small piece from Tuscany, one of the most beautiful footage I've ever shot, and the trip was a whole dream. And I wrote the caption in German. I read it back, and it hit me in the stomach. Nothing was wrong with the words. They just weren't mine. It was a weird feeling. And that was the moment I couldn't ignore it anymore. I was about to take the work that matters most to me and attach it to a version of my life I've already moved past. And nobody forced me to. I was doing it because it was reasonable. And the thing is, you can't really build something honest on a contradiction like that. No matter how good the reasons are, you'll feel it every single day. So here's what none of those arguments could account for. The things that deeply, permanently changed me as a person were all in English. I was a teenager sitting in my room, and I was watching people on the other side of the world. People who traveled, people who built something of their own, people who lived by their own rules instead of the ones they'd been handed. And that inspired me so deeply since that day. that inspired me so much. And they showed me that you're allowed to design a life around who you actually are. That freedom isn't something you earn at 65. That there's a way to live where the work you do and the person you are aren't actually two separate things. And that perspective changed me forever. That freedom they embraced. It was special. It touched me. It moved me. And that's why I'm doing all of that. And everything I believe about how to live, I met in this language first. So English was never a rational decision. English is where I became myself. And that's what I was about to give away, for very good reasons. I'm telling you this in English right now, and for the first time in months, what I'm saying and the way I'm saying it are the same thing. It was never a choice. It was already there. It was there in the first video I ever made, 4 years ago, before anyone had told me anything. Here's what I'd want you to take from this. The world outside of you is always telling you the answer, the solution. There's always someone with a better method, a smarter framework, a reason why your own instinct is naive. Most of it is well meant, but a lot of it is even true. It's just too much. Too many voices, all of them certain, all at the same time. And the answer was never out there. It's already in you. It was in you before any of those people showed up. The problem is that every voice you let in moves you one small step away from yourself, away from your own instinct, away from the thing you already knew. It's never dramatic. It's small enough that you can't feel it happening. And then one day you look up years later and you're living a life you never actually chose. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. That's not even the question. The question is that you can't find yourself anywhere in it. And you can't point to a single moment where you decided any of it, even though you knew the answer on day one. The more you consume, the less you understand yourself. I don't think these voices ever really stop. Mine haven't, they're still here, they're still very convincing. But now I have a question I ask myself when they get loud. What did I love before anyone had an opinion about it? What did I spend like hours on as a kid before I learned to ask whether this was smart, whether this was right, before other people's judgments started counting more than my own? And what did I do like straight out of curiosity, straight out of like, I want to know this, like out of intuition? That's usually where it is, not in the advice. In the thing you were doing before nobody was watching. And I don't know where this leads. I've got no idea if any of this works out. But I believe in it. And for the first time in a long time, what I make sounds like me.